Cool. Can everyone see? There we go. Okay, so as I said, I'm the lead beach ranger at Croyde. I thought it might be quite a good way to start just by sort of introducing myself and my background, actually. It is something that I get asked about quite a lot, mainly younger people wondering how I actually got a paid job in conservation, which is quite a rarity. And my way to it was quite roundabout. So I thought I'd sort of give a little bit of context as to how I actually got this job and how I came to be here. So I started my academic career actually studying psychology at Bath University. So that was back in 2007 when I started that course. It actually, because I'd seen a television program actually about someone curing animal phobias, and I thought that would be a good thing to do because I thought I don't understand why people are scared of snakes and spiders. And so maybe that's how I would channel my love for that kind of thing. It actually turned out that I like animals more than I like people. So I did graduate, so I finished that course, but I'd sort of done the wrong thing really. And so that sort of started me doing various career paths, but all the meanwhile interning and volunteering at various conservation work, charities, all of that kind of thing, you know, the Woodland Trust, the Wildlife Trust. I volunteered at a lovely project up near Nottingham called the Wild Sherwood Project, which I don't think exists unfortunately anymore, but it was essentially involved in getting people that were out of work into habitat conservation projects, getting them into a kind of routine and showing them how to do practical habitat work, which was really, really nice actually. Eventually, I was able to afford to do a master's degree. And so I did this at the University of Exeter, starting in 2016. And so I did this in animal behaviour, which, contrary to what it sort of sounds like, it's not pet psychology or anything like that. It's wild animal behaviour, which is a relatively new-ish, up-and-coming kind of interdisciplinary field. It looks at the interaction between an animal's biology and the environment and how that results in a behaviour. And it's really crucial when we're looking at conservation efforts. So anything from an animal's breeding behaviours or migration, feeding behaviours, all of that kind of thing can be looked at through the lens of animal behaviour. And we can look at how our impact on the world as a whole or a certain environment, you know, anthropogenic impacts on a certain environment can affect an animal's behaviour. And I focused on coastal species. So my actual dissertation ended up being on social fish species and looking at how water pollution and decreased visibility actually in water can impact social fish species, specifically their shoaling behaviour, anti-predatory behaviour, and feeding behaviour as well. So that's basically what I did in my master's course. But that, as is the story for a lot of people, didn't immediately result in paid work within the field of conservation. So I am then embarked on even more volunteering and animal behaviour studies. I worked at Living Coast in Torquay, which is another one that I think has shut down actually now, unfortunately. It's not me, I promise. Well, I don't know actually, I hope it isn't. But yeah, so I did some more animal behaviour studies on the octopus that they had there, which I've actually got in the little picture there, Octavia the octopus, which was brought in by a local fisherman, and worked with the community seagrass initiative there as well, looking at what impacts the germination of seagrass seeds. And then I eventually got a bit of a paid role with Devon Sea Safari, doing wildlife tours, talking to people about our coastal wildlife, and eventually, miraculously, got a job as the Croyde Beach Ranger back in 2019. So essentially a bit of luck, but a lot of volunteering along the way, and eventually got me a good job. Hey, a success story. So I now work, as I said, for Croyde Beach but that is owned by Parkdean Resorts, so I am an employee of Parkdean Resorts. And so this is Ruda Holiday Park, the land boundaries of Ruda Holiday Park, seen in context of Croyde Village as a whole. So you can see we own a huge amount of the centre of sort of Croyde, a really crucial habitat, right bang in the centre of this area of the AONB. And so it's approximately a 64-hectare site. And we own Croyde Beach, the whole of Croyde Beach. I'm usually right up to the mean low water mark. So most beaches, a lot of beaches around the country are owned up to the medium high water mark, which on this picture is around where the sort of the sand changes. We're pretty high tide on this picture actually. But mean low water will be right down pretty much to the boundaries of this picture. Obviously sections of the rocks either side to the north and south of the sand. The whole of the Croyde Borough sand dune system. We have 4 dune paddocks, which I've circled there, areas of the back of the dunes, which I'll talk a little bit more about how we manage those later on. 2 lakes, which are sort of, I've vaguely circled our whole lake area, what we sort of encompass the site as our lake area. So we have 2 nature lakes down at the bottom there, an area of HLS land around it, which again I'll come to in a second. The very final section of the stream as well that runs and finishes down in the middle of the beach there. And then these are the 2 areas of higher level stewardship land that we have on site. So that's my terrible sort of drawing on Word that I've done there, but that basically covers the whole area of the dune paddocks. And there's a big sort of wildflower meadow around the lakes as well, which again, I'll talk a little bit more about later. But my team and myself are also responsible for all the trees on site. So every single tree that we have on site, we also look after. So you can imagine after storm events, that takes up a lot of our time. Certainly the last storm that we had took about, well, we still haven't finished actually, but about 2 weeks of pretty much just dealing with trees. So that can be a large part of our task depending on the time of year. So I've sort of divided what we do as a team into 3 sort of main sort of chunks, that being beach services. Each one of these I'll go into in a second in much more detail. Then you've got the conservation and habitat maintenance side of things. And finally, and arguably one of the most important things is community engagement and education as well, which is very important and something we really enjoy doing. So the first one is beach services. So this one's one that takes pretty much in the summer the majority of our time. And it basically boils down to making sure that the beach is clean and safe for the thousands of people that turn up on their holidays every day. And so the main one is keeping the beach clean, which is easier sometimes than others. So this literally involves changing the bins. So we empty the bins every day in the summer. Litter picking as well. So this is something that we do by hand on Croyde Beach. We don't beach rake. We do have one, but I would be loath to ever use it. If I'm being perfectly honest, it's not something that I personally would want to use unless we had a really, really big seaweed dump with absolutely unmanageable amounts of litter in it. Then I may consider it, but it's never used. Basically, it hasn't been used since I have been there. That is, I'm sure you all know, because it damages the strandline ecosystem. It basically entirely removes the strandline ecosystem, and that being done repeatedly over the course of many months or years can damage the formation of the dunes, leads to sand loss from the beach, all of that stuff that we don't want to happen. So we take on the much more laborious task of doing it by hand. Anything large, any dangerous debris, we have the tractor that we will use. So big bits of netting, metal. We have boats that wash in, really old boats that smash up on the rocks. All of that stuff we can pick up as well using the tractor. Wildlife as well, so any wildlife that comes in. So whether that be dead. So we have the most recent one we have, I've got a little picture of, you can just about make it out in front of the lime kiln there. We had a porpoise wash in. So we deal with that. We report it to the cetacean stranding programme. And then it is the beach manager's responsibility to remove all of those. So that is something that we deal with as well. any live wildlife that comes in. I am a member of the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, so I'm a marine mammal medic, so I can be first there assessing anything. We have had a couple of seal pups. The most recent was only about 3 months ago or so, but unfortunately it was late at night, so I didn't actually attend that one. But it was taken away. It was a very ill seal pup, as tends to be if they end up on Croyde. But I am a marine mammal medic, so anything that does come in that's live, I can be there straight away, pretty much if I'm at work. And also keeping the access points near to the beach. So that's really important after storms, if you have big bits of driftwood, washing, cutting off the access for the Coast Guard or the RNLI, we have to keep that clear, and that needs to be done really early in the morning, obviously to make sure that they can get in first thing if it's during the season or as soon as, basically. Beach patrolling as well, so this is something that we do in the summer. Rule enforcement sounds a bit strict, but essentially that is what we do. Obviously we have dog restrictions in season, so no dogs on the flat of the beach, on the dunes only, so that is something that we patrol the beach to make sure that that is happening. We look for obviously people having barbecues and metal detecting. We look for people who have a lot of glass. Technically glass isn't allowed on the beach. It's a very difficult one to enforce. I'm sure you guys know in the summer how busy it gets, but we can speak to people, make sure that they take it away with them, try and reduce the amount of glass that we have on the beach as much as possible. Generally, doing ranger walks, we actually do this for the whole site weekly, literally looking at absolutely everything to see if there's any damage to anything that we haven't picked up on, anything that we need to do. Another crucial part of beach services basically is providing the signage as well. So during the bathing season, we get water quality results from the Environment Agency. It's about 4 times a month. So whenever we get a new result, we have beach signs where we can write every single water quality result on our beach signs so people know exactly what's going on. We also are part of the pollution risk forecasting scheme with the Environment Agency. So that is basically something that I get messaged every single morning before 9 o'clock in the morning to say whether there is a potential pollution risk that day. That's to do mainly for Croyde, it's rainfall. So rainfall would cause a lot of agricultural runoff into our stream, and that's what affects our water quality the most. If we weren't really on it with dogs, that may well start impacting our water quality as well. Given Croyde being a bay, it would swirl around, unfortunately, and would start impacting our water quality. But for us, mainly, it's to do with rainfall events. So we get notified if there's a pollution risk, and we put notices up every morning if there is a pollution risk incident. Any notices as well we would deal with. So if we're getting reports from the RNLI that there's lots of weaverfish or jellyfish, say if we notice lots of Portuguese man of war or any sort of hazardous plants for dogs, palm oil, something like that on the beach, we would put a notice up just to warn people. And conservation signage as well. This is something that I'm really looking to focus a little bit more on in the next season, the coming year. We had a really nice event as part of the Great British Beach Clean this year where I did a poster making session with local kids, basically making a load of posters for our dunes to talk about littering in the dunes, having barbecues and dog mess as well. And some really nice posters came out of that. So hopefully they'll be going up in our dunes in the coming months. But trying to focus much more on conservation and interpretive signage, people making the beach a lot more of a sort of an educational experience where we can see what's going on much more obviously. So focus is going to be on that, hopefully a lot more in the coming seasons while I'm here. Recycling schemes on the beach as well. So really important to us. There's so much rubbish that is generated from a beach. It's unbelievable. So we recycle bodyboards with Keep Britain Tidy. That's under their Wave of Waste scheme. So I don't know if any of you have seen the press that goes on around that. We've done various bits of press about it, but last year we collected 450-ish broken bodyboards. I'm still collecting them now somehow. They just keep appearing from who knows where. But yeah, so about 450, and unfortunately that's pretty much the most that we've had, certainly since I've been here. And that's really interesting because we essentially, as a Croyde, became cheap bodyboard free, with retailers saying that they weren't selling cheap bodyboards. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have worked. They don't sell the cheapest bodyboards, but we've gone 1 or 2 levels up from that, and they're still breaking. And it's just the sheer visitor numbers that we've had last year, really, that is impacting it. So it'll be interesting to see how many we get this year with potentially slightly reduced visitor numbers and that no cheap bodyboard scheme in place in Croyde. But we also recycle loads of other stuff as well. Beach toys. So we were mentioning Andy Clee. That beach toy borrow library up there, up in the top picture, is pretty much his creation. I'm not going to take any credit for that, actually. I did a bit of painting, but but he made that with us, and we collect toys to put in that. So non-broken toys. These are all toys that are left on the beach that are still perfectly serviceable. We don't buy any in to provide those toys. I have a huge amount in storage that can go into that borrow library that are perfectly fine that we've collected, but we also collect broken toys, beach chairs, beach tents, all of that kind of thing. Fixing damage is the next thing that we do. So unfortunately, we do occasionally get, I say occasionally, damage to the beach. So it may be weather caused, so it may be fencing or something like that, but it can also be, unfortunately, malicious. So signage, we have a real problem, unfortunately, because a lot of the signage that we provide is wooden, and we're putting it on a beach in sand. They're quite easy to take out if you've really got your mind set to it. So we have a lot of burnt signs. That bodyboard box up in the top corner there is no longer in existence. That was pulled up into the sand dunes and burnt. Unfortunately, we rescued the metal plaque on the front of it, but that was burnt very badly as well, so we could tell what it was. But so fixing all of that kind of thing, rebuilding boxes and signs and all of that, unfortunately. And a big part of it as well, of course, is working with other organisations and other people. So the RNLI, obviously, we have the RNLI, which Parkdean pay for on the beach in the summer. So liaising with them, making sure everything's okay. The council wardens, whether that be our neighbourhood officers or the footpath wardens, all of those, we all, join together to work on various things. Events organisers as well, obviously, we have a lot of events going on the beach, and it's my job to make sure we know what's going on, we know what we need to do, they know what they need to do, right through from Ocean Fest down to beach cricket tournaments, volleyball tournaments, surf competitions, all of that kind of thing. The press as well, obviously being on a beach, we quite often get the press coming down, wanting to film various things. All of that needs permission, but also we get involved as well, talking about various things that happen on the beach and things that we think need sort of publicising. For instance, our bodyboard recycling, as I said, but also I've been on the news talking about various container spill incidents that we've had as well. And neighbours as well, our land neighbours, making sure that we all know what's going on, working on, hopefully, down end footpath, so the footpath that comes down onto the beach from down end that's washed away, that concrete footpath. We're working on hopefully getting that sorted soon. Everything that happens on the beach, which I think I'll talk about a little bit later, basically being part of the Staunton Faggy Point Coast Triple SI, we need to get consent from Natural England for any major work that we do on the beach. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when I go on to this. So this is a nice one that we do. So conservation and habitat maintenance, obviously super, super important. We have a really crucial piece of habitat here in the middle of Croyde, and it's sort of divided into 2 main sections, I guess. So maintaining the habitats that we already have, making sure that no damage comes to them. So that's the beach and the sand dunes, our lakes, the stream and the trees on site, but also helping to create habitats as well. So specifically, the past year, we created a lot of new wildflower areas on site. working with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust for a lot of those. But we also created all of our raised banks on site. So they used to be, under our management, trimmed back all throughout the season to short grass. It was thought that that's nicer, neater, which in some people's opinions that is the case. It's not my opinion. But we worked with our team to make sure that these were left to grow. So we had nice tussocky grass banks on site this year, working to sort of connect our habitat that we have here. So the work that we do on our HLS land with our dune habitat, all the way up to what Fraser deals with, Middleborough Hill, and all of that kind of habitat there. It helps, hopefully, is the theory, connect all those up by having some nice areas of long grass. I like to take, I don't really like to take credit, but I like to say that I'm sure Fraser may tell you about this, that we do manage this site with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust for brown-banded carder-bees, which we do have on site. We've only ever found males on site though, but I do believe that a couple of queens were found up on Middleborough Hill this year for the first time in 20 or so years. So I like to think in my mind that it's because we left our nice long grassy banks, but I don't know. We'll obviously never have any proof of that, but I'm going to tell myself that. And then this autumn, we cut all those back, trim them right back down, put a load of wildflower seed on there, and we will be managing them for that to hopefully get a lot more insects on those banks and connecting our habitats nicely. So that's something we focused on last year. In this coming year, we're focusing on putting a few more ponds on site. We put one in last year, just little mini ponds, little sort of pockets of, firstly, for the people on site. You know, we don't have too many, it's all down beach side, but obviously we have a lot of the site that extends up across, and a lot of that is pretty manicured areas of grass. That's where we had the long, nice wildflower banks. So putting a few little ponds in there so that our guests firstly can see them and have a bit of sort of nature interpretation signage around there, but also it's a great little habitat to add in. Adding some deadwood hedges in as well, and more bird and bat boxes. So we're looking at hopefully a few more kestrel boxes and owl boxes in the coming year, and bat boxes as well. So a little bit about our higher level stewardship land. Like I said, we look after the lake meadows and the dune paddocks. So the lake meadows are managed for wildflowers. So we are basically looking at, we control some species in there, but they're basically cut at a certain time of year to provide late forage. That's for the brown-banded carder bees and to promote wildflower growth as well. The dune paddocks are managed as a dune wildflower area, basically. We trim back bracken in there twice a year, so all the bracken. The bramble in there is controlled as well. And then in September time, they're grazed by a herd of Dexter cattle, and that is all to promote dune wildflower species coming up in that area, try to prevent the bracken and the bramble from taking over. And they're both under a higher level stewardship agreement, so we manage them in those specific ways. I'll go into, I've sort of skipped it a little bit, but our dune habitat as well. So I've got a couple of pictures on here just to show how quickly our dune habitat can actually change. So the one on the left there, that's got the blue sort of outlines on it, is from 2019. It's a Google Maps images from 2019, and then the one on the right is from 2020 actually, and you can see certainly that top area of outlined blue there, how much marram grass we lost just in that 1 year, and that's from the sheer amount of people that came that season holidaying in the UK. Basically, it had started to form a bit of a dune blowout, and it's alongside where we used to have some fencing, and it just became an area where people ran down, unfortunately bodyboarded down as well. And just so quickly, all of that marram grass, it's really pretty vulnerable to trampling, and it was lost within the course of the year. So we're working, like I said, everything that we do has to go through Natural England because it's a triple FI site. So we currently do have a consent application in for putting some fencing around the area and doing some marrow grass planting as well. Hopefully that will come back soon. And as and when it does, we'd really love to get the community involved with helping us out with doing that. So watch this space for that one. A big part of conservation and habitat management is understanding the land that you actually are looking after. And so we do a lot of monitoring and surveying as well. As I've spoken about, we do a lot of bumblebee surveys. They're a really nice indicator species. We do insect surveys as well. So fit counts, flower insect time counts, specifically on our HLS land, just to see where we're at with insect numbers. We also keep an eye on our lake and our stream, the end bit of the stream, just to see where the invertebrate and amphibian numbers are, kick sampling in those. And in 2022, we're hoping to do some bat surveying as well. And then the flora we have on site, obviously, as I've talked about, we monitor the bracken. We have a lot of bracken in our dunes, so all of that is monitored, seeing how far it's encroaching, and talking to Natural England about management of that. Dune invasives as well, keeping an eye on them. We have an area of Rosa rugosa, Japanese rose by our stream, various other things, cotoneaster. We have some rattlesnake master up in the dunes as well, and doing orchid counts. Specifically, that's in our dune paddocks, so looking at pyramid orchid numbers as well, just keeping an eye on those. And beach litter surveys, which is something that we've started doing in the past year or so, and hoping to kind of build up a really nice database of beach litter. So if anybody wants to do one, we always have surveys available for other people to get involved as well. They're basically, you go and you do a litter pick for half an hour and you record absolutely everything that you pick up to the best of your ability. Obviously, sometimes it's difficult to tell what you're picking up, but to the best of everybody's ability. And then we can basically log all of those. I'm hoping to get a nice big database up, and we can start seeing, if we get enough people doing them, how the rubbish on the beach changes from season to season, but also how we're getting it, how it's changing year and year as well. And so that hopefully will be quite a nice one that we've started doing once we've got a bit of data. And then the last one, as I said, which is a really, really important one, is working with the community and education as well. We're obviously a big part of the community owning a beach, and making sure that we do community events and also educate people about what we have and what we do is really, really important. So obviously the first thing is public beach cleans. It's something that we run pretty frequently alongside Plastic Free North Devon mainly. The last one that we did was, there's a picture of it down below with Lynn there in a little Christmas hat. That was on Christmas Eve this year. We did a beach clean. I don't know if anybody came along, but it was really, really good one actually. We had about 60 people come and help us out on Christmas Eve. We do have one planned. I forget the date. It's towards the end of this month with Plastic Free. So if anybody does want to come along, have a look. They tend to advertise them for me because I don't have social media. So I put posters up, but they do the social media or advertising. So keep your eyes peeled with them for any future beach cleans that we're doing. We also do a lot of school trips, school days, where we do a range of activities, often beach cleaning with them, but we do all sorts of things as well, which we also do with the Wave Rangers, which is a wonderful organisation for kids in the local area to come along and do some conservation work. So for schools and Wave Rangers, we kind of do, and our Outdoor and Explore programme as well, actually, which is basically a activities programme that we put on. Is for our guests, but it is also open to the public as well, where all of those, we do rock pooling, so go on rock pool rambles, we do bug hunting. So I've got that picture of the kids in the high vis up there. That's a Wave Rangers group. It was a very, very wet and miserable day. They were all doing very well, doing some sweep netting in our dune paddocks. So we do that. We do, dune bug hunting, rock pooling. We do pond dipping and kick sampling in our ponds and our stream. We do some nature art as well. We run little beach cleans with them as well, called Beach Clean Hero, where we take the kids out and do some beach cleaning, and then we do some microplastic work, sieving for microplastics and nurdles down at our stream and educating them on what they are. It's actually amazing how much the local kids know. They know all about microplastics and nurdles, but it's really nice for us. We're sort of in a bit of a unique position in that we get guests who, this may be the first time ever to a British beach. It might be the only time this family come on holiday to a British beach, and being able to educate them while they're here and show them what we have here and how amazing it is, but also the problems that we have, is really, really interesting. And parents are so interested as well, actually, when we do a lot of the microplastic work. They've never heard of nurdles, they have no idea what they are. And it's really nice to sort of tie in that, okay, you may live somewhere in the Midlands, nowhere near a beach, but what you do and how you act can actually impact what we see on our beach down here. So it's really nice to have that opportunity as well. It's not just the locals, to get guests involved and show them British coastline for potentially the first time. Also community engagement events, so sort of the wider picture of things. The Great British Beach Clean, which I talked about a little bit, we had a big day this year for the Great British Beach Clean, where Andy and his Ocean Explorers tank came down as well. We ran rock pooling sessions, we did microplastic sessions. I did that poster making session that I was talking about, which hopefully we'll see the results of soon. World Sand Dune Day events as well, World Oceans Day events, all of those kind of things. But also our recycling scheme. So that's a really important one to obviously talk about and make sure that people know about. Firstly, how much is generated from a beach, how much our choices when we visit a beach and what we bring to the beach with us impact what we do, and how much time we have to spend sorting that out, basically. And also talking to the press about these kind of things, you know, getting the word out to everybody, the people that are coming to visit our beach, not just locals. Locals are great. We all know how much rubbish there can be on a beach, but I think a lot of people that come and visit don't. They may buy their bodyboards beforehand, and that's why we're getting so many, because they can't buy the really, really cheap ones in Croyde anymore. So talking to the press about all of the issues that we have. This coming season, before the season starts, I'm really hoping to have a press event talking about all the other stuff that we get on the beach. So not the bodyboards, we've talked about that. Probably people are bored of hearing me talk about bodyboards at this point in the news. So this year we're going to do, from last season, I saved everything else pretty much that we got. All of the chairs, all of the beach tents, all of the broken beach toys, wetsuits, single shoes, goggles, all of that stuff I have stored right through to now. And before the season, we're hoping to do a nice big sort of mural on the beach art project type thing, with potentially the Wave Rangers, maybe a local school, hoping to get a local artist involved who's more artistic than me. If anybody knows anyone, do let me know, or wants to get involved. And get the press down and just show them how much other stuff is also generated, not just bodyboards. And also, I thought I'd just add in here, I'm also working with a group called Access for All. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it. Started by a local mum of a disabled child, and he does surf lessons with the Wave Project. But unfortunately, is finding it very difficult to access a lot of our beaches. So we are looking for funding. We have applied for funding, and we're just waiting to hear back on getting a changing place facility at Croyde, and also looking at various other ways that we can try and make our beaches much more accessible. So walkway systems, beach wheelchairs. We do have 2 beach wheelchairs at Croyde, but they're not really publicised. So looking to find ways where we can make sure that people know about that. But also hopefully in the future get a changing place facility, which would be amazing. A little bit quickly, I think I'm really rambling, so let me talk about the challenges. So the first bullet point here I put is the summer. As I've spoken about, just the sheer number of guests that we have. unfortunately causes, even though it's a small percentage of people leaving stuff on the beach, a lot of litter and unfortunately a lot of damage to things as well. So a couple of the pictures, the bottom picture there is our bins overflowing. We try as best we can to provide as many bins as we think is necessary, but sometimes we're caught out and the sheer amount of litter unfortunately spills over. But at least these are the guys that have brought litter back to the bins. That doesn't always happen, unfortunately. That middle picture there is actually some of our wood. We hadn't even made it into signs yet, but it got taken from our beach yard and put on a fire on the beach, and they haven't even burnt it very well, which is more infuriating. But yes, so that kind of thing unfortunately takes a lot of our time away from actually doing a lot of the work, the habitat work that we want to be doing. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. A lot of our time is going to be taken to deal with those kind of things in the summer. Public awareness and engagement, I've put actually as a challenge as well. I think a lot of people that we get coming to the beach don't even know that a beach can be owned by anybody. And actually communicating that can be quite difficult. I don't think a lot of people even see the signs. But it's quite an interesting activity actually in the summer. If you sit by one of our beach signs, which at the bottom say owned by Parkdean Resort, if you sit by one of those signs for 10 minutes or so, you can literally see people coming past going, I didn't even know that a beach could be owned. Parkdean own the beach, what are they talking about? Which is quite funny to do. We've got 10 minutes free in the summer, but communicating then what we do with people is also a challenge. How do we communicate everything that we do with people? You know, we don't have social media. It's something that I'd really like to get, but just generally communicating to the sheer number of people that are here what we do, what they shouldn't probably be doing, is one of our challenges. And also I've put learning about and understanding the habitat. So I've been here for about 3 years now, but obviously we've had a big issue going on in the world with the pandemic over the past couple of years, and it's sort of meant that I haven't always been here. I got furloughed for a part of it, and it's taken me till probably about now to see a full year properly on site, understanding and learning about the habitat. So I think we're at the point now where I pretty much know what we get in the summer, in the spring, whatever, but it's taken a little while. And it will always continue to take time learning about what we have, and trying to dedicate that time specifically in the summer when our time is taken up by so many other things, making sure that we know about what we have here and we understand how best to manage the habitat. And along with that as well, our budget, it has to be focused on the summer. My staff budget has to be focused on the summer, and it does mean that often I am seriously reduced in staff. In the winter time at the moment, it is just me actually. Hopefully we're getting some team in soon, but all of our budget, because of everything else that I've said, is really focused on the summer months and the beach. Weather is always an issue, whether it's the hot weather, bringing loads of guests in unexpectedly, or stormy weather, knocking down a load of branches from our trees and having to deal with that for a lot longer than expected. And as I sort of alluded to, all work that we do on the beach and the dunes as well, it's under a SSSI, Site of Special Scientific Interest. And so we have to receive consent for everything that we want to do from Natural England. Just put natural there, but yes, Natural England. And so unfortunately, especially over the past couple of years when they've not really been doing site visits, it is quite slow progress. And so sometimes we can't do things as quickly as we would otherwise like to. But quickly, the good stuff, obviously it's the best place in the world to work, we all know that, but also having the support from local people, getting to talk to you guys and working with lots of wonderful people, wonderful organisations that all have the same aim and goal in mind. We all want to protect this habitat, and working together is how essentially we're going to do that best. But also it's really, really rewarding. You know, I'm essentially the custodian of this really, really crucial habitat in Croyde, and having the opportunity to educate visitors and locals as well, and making a difference to it, Also, the backing from Parkdean is great. You know, it's a really big holiday park company, and they don't need to necessarily have somebody like me who has the background in conservation and works with conservation in mind. We could just beach rake the beach and make it look pristine. We would probably get a few less complaints from guests if we did that. But they understand how important it is to protect this habitat. Our ESG group, which is Environmental Social Governance Group, is something that I've been involved with since the start. They've really involved me in it, and making our new environmental policies, which are really, really positive. Actually, I can't really go into detail about it, but a really sort of industry leading environmental focus. We're looking at making biodiversity a really big part of Parkdean in the future, so that is really exciting. And yeah, as I said there, the future, what we have planned, and the focus of Parkdean being on our environment is really exciting, and different actually for a holiday park company who doesn't necessarily have to focus on that. It's great that they are, and that they really see the value in protecting what we have and understanding what we have. And that is me, but thank you very much for listening to me.
Hello all, some of you have met me already. My name is Fraser, and I'm Assistant Ranger for the National Trust based out of Woolacombe. Now, what that really means in effect is that I'm kind of a dog's body. If something needs doing, they send me out to do it. So it's kind of, you know, oh, there's a bit of fence gone down, go and fix it sort of thing. So I'm not involved in terms of planning of the big projects. I'm more kind of delivery boy at the moment. They send me out to deliver bits of big projects, which is, I don't know, it's the way I like it at the moment. I guess, yeah, so I'll start off just mentioning a little bit about myself. So I studied marine biology at Plymouth originally, and then I did my postgrad in sustainable environmental management before realizing that policy absolutely wasn't for me, and moving as far away from it as humanly possible. Then I've done a lot of work in sort of education. So I worked doing environmental education for a little while with Field Studies Council. Then I went off to be a teacher for a bit before realizing the error of my ways. Then I worked at the National Marine Aquarium in Plymouth for a little while before gravitating up to North Devon, initially as a volunteer with the National Trust, and before sort of getting a job here as an assistant ranger. So I've been assistant ranger here for just over a year now, and it would have been closer to 2 years had it not been for pandemic curtailing it. But yeah, here we are, we're sort of back on it now, I guess. I guess before I get into this proper, one thing I will say is it's just following on from something Holly mentioned. I wasn't planning on talking about what we were doing at Middleborough Hill, but since she brought it up, I may as well. So she mentioned about the brown-banded carder bee. So we do a lot of work, which I'll probably focus more on later, with Bumblebee Conservation Trust as well. And so we have found brown-banded carder bees on our dunes, which you can just about see in the picture there on the left. And so we found males there in the past, and obviously there's a comparatively large breeding population of brown-banded carder bees at Braunton Burrows. So part of what we're doing, and again sort of what Holly was mentioning, is trying to create a bee motorway, if you will, between there and our dunes to try and get them across. And we did find one brown-banded carder queen on Middleborough Hill. I wasn't entirely planning on talking about it because what we've done there at the moment is quite artificial. It's sort of a planted meadow using a seed crop, which is it's a stepping point to something more real and interesting in the future. But as things stand, I find it a little bit well, yeah, artificial. So it's not quite what we want it to be yet, but in the future it could be something really cool. So yeah. Right then, so on with things. So first of all, just a little bit about our patch. So we do manage a reasonably large area. So starting over at Ilfracombe Tors, we've got most of the coastal strip around Woolacombe, and then across and Baggy Point around Croyde. And you can also see there's a small red patch under the sea of Croyde as well. So there's a little bit up on Down End as well. Then we've got the valley up above Woolacombe, and we also manage Middle Beach at Woolacombe as well. So we don't manage the whole thing. So it's split into 3 sections. You have Woolacombe Beach and Putsborough Beach at either end, and then Middle Beach in the middle. And that's the bit that we manage. Now, thankfully, as far as we're concerned, the more popular and busy parts of Middle Beach are of Woolacombe Beach, sorry, are the Woolacombe end and the Putsborough end. We don't get so many people pushing across onto Middle Beach, which is nice for us because it means we don't have quite so much to deal with as Holly does. Our sort of litter picking and beach cleaning efforts are a lot, yeah, they're a lot less large scale as a result, which is quite nice. So our habitats that we manage in general, it's mostly acid grassland and pasture, but we do have small pockets of maritime grassland in there. And there's the occasional little patch of lowland heath. Then, of course, we have the sand dunes at Woolacombe and Middle Beach, as I said, at Woolacombe itself. So, on to Mort Point then. So Mort Point is one of the places. I'm not going to talk about everything we're doing because I would keep you here for hours. So I'm just going to focus on some of the more, what I think are the more exciting things that we're up to at the moment. So Mort Point itself, it's largely acid grassland with a few bits of maritime grassland on the fringe. There's little bits of heath on it, and you can see on this picture we've got large areas of gorse and the brown of bracken. Now, what we're aiming to do here is we're trying to create more of a mosaic habitat. So what we have here is, you can see it's sort of large areas, and they're, you know, very homogeneous. There's sort of the same thing in large patches, and what we want is to create sort of more broken up and a little bit more of everything, really. Now, one of those things that we really want to do, in an ideal world, what we're looking to do is to try and create some ideal forage for chough. Now, chough are very, very particular in terms of what they want. They need incredibly short grass because they tend to sort of dig, and anything sort of longer, it will poke them in the eyes and they can't see what's going on, and you know, they just don't like it. So the aim is to try and create as much close to the edges as we can of really, really short grassland. Although that is something of a pipe dream, but you never know. So yeah, that's one of the things we're trying to work on there. Now, apologies, I've gone too fast. So some of the things we're doing in order to control. One of the things we want to do is reduce the amount of scrub and the amount of gorse that's there, because there is quite a lot. And the ways we go about doing this, we have public bash and burn events, which are always really, really good fun. We do advertise those, so if anyone's keen to get involved, absolutely have a look and come along. They're normally in sort of February and October half terms, just so then we reach the most people. So we get people to come along, we arm them with saws and loppers, send them off into areas of the gorse, hack it down, before having sort of pretty monstrous bonfires and burning it all up. Yeah, these are generally quite successful and often really good fun as well. So yeah, quite fond of those. And the point of doing that is we're creating these clear areas, and then it's following it up with grazing. So you can see in the picture there the sheep, but our new focus on Mort is sheep do a job. They're very good at what they do, but they aren't the best grazers because they tend to stick to the short areas, and they don't leave tussocks. They're kind of lawnmowery. So what we've done now is we've got belted galloways out there, and in the future we're considering maybe getting some Exmoor ponies out there as well. But the thing I really wanted to talk about was the belted galloways, because what we're doing with those is what I think really cool. So what we're using is GPS collars. So here are some of the belties themselves out on Moat Point. Those are the older boys. The ones that are out there at the moment are the younger ones. But yes, what we're using currently is no fence collars. So you'll see in a moment in some later pictures some collars around the cows' necks. Now they work off GPS, and basically what you can do is you boot up an app and you can draw an area on that map, which will keep them in effectively. You're creating artificial fences, so the GPS tracks them, and then it alerts the cows with a beep whenever they're nearing those boundaries, and then if they continue there'll be a shock, and it's a sort of a 3-stage system. So it's a small one to begin with, then the next step it's a slightly bigger sort of noise and shock, and then the third one, if they go past the outside of the boundary, they get an even bigger noise and a bigger shock, and hopefully all of that will turn them around. Now what we have to do is we have to basically teach them this system. So we'll have them back in a field somewhere else where they are contained by fences, and then draw the no fence inside that, so they learn the system about the beeps and what it means. And it takes them, cows are quite clever, it takes them a surprisingly short amount of time to learn how it works and to follow it effectively. So yeah, it's, well, I think it's a very cool development, and it's a way you can keep them in without putting horrible fencing in and spoiling the view. I mean, the views from Moat Point are lovely, so we didn't particularly want to have fences at the edge to keep the cows away from the edges and ruin that. So using this means we don't need to put those fences up, which is also much easier for us. Putting up sort of kilometers of fencing takes quite a lot of time and quite a lot of money to do it as well. Fencing is not cheap, and anyone who's ever attempted to dig on Moat Point will tell you it's horrible. It's generally not very long before you've reached bedrock, and yeah, digging through bedrock is a nightmare. Now the other advantage of this system is that you can move those points, I mean, almost immediately. Basically all it takes is a couple of minutes for the satellites to update, so that means you can actually move the edges of the boundary and push the cattle from one place to another without actually having to drive them, which is, I mean, fantastic. They used to use this system in, I believe it's in Norway somewhere, and they had them in these huge open expanses, and they would bring the cattle towards, when they needed to gather them in, they'd just move them closer by moving the dots and over a period of time. Just very, very cool. Now, so here's a couple of pictures of just, so these are the younger belted galloways. You can see them pushing into these areas of bracken. And so by doing this, they'll be damaging the bramble that are in there. They'll also be damaging the bracken rhizome under the ground. So by doing this at the right time of year, you can actually, it means that the bracken grows up less virulently, I suppose, than it would the next season. So by doing this over time, you'll sort of slowly but surely damage the bracken to the point where it doesn't cover up quite so much area, which is what we're aiming for. Now in this next picture, you can just about make out the collars. Almost looks like a little cowbell under their chin. So they are very, very small. They're quite unobtrusive. There's also a couple of other really cool things you can do with this system. So you can track where the cows are. So it will give you sort of a week or two's worth of where they've been. And you effectively, you get a heat map of the area they're in, and it shows their favorite spots. Another thing that's great, obviously, when we have livestock grazing our areas, it's very important that we check them to make sure they're healthy and that everything's all right with them. It's so much easier if you know exactly where they are before you've started. You don't have to spend hours searching for them. You can simply, oh yeah, here they are, off you go, and yep, there they are, which is great. you can also create, I don't know, I like to think of it, you can basically create sort of the sutu, if you will. You can create exclusion zones within the area they're allowed in. So you can keep them off sensitive areas, you can keep them away from pinch points, you can just sort of really well manage where they go. So if you were to go out on Moat Point at the moment, you would probably find these boys somewhere in the middle. What we've done is we've gone around, we've tested the area by carrying a collar around ourselves, so we know exactly how the boundaries work. We've not put them anywhere where they'll get trapped or penned in by people walking on the paths, and they are very, very sweet little boys. Where we've got 8 out there at the moment, and the aim will be to increase that over time if this system works. So hopefully in the not too distant future there may be sort of 20 odd out there, which would be great. And yeah, if you do go to Moat Point frequently, you will see some of the areas and some of the brilliant effects it's had. So there's an area on the north side of Moat Point, just beyond Morty Wells, which is often very boggy. And there's a slope down by the side of it, which a couple of years ago was just coated in bracken. And these boys, they've completely transformed it. What you see there is sort of, you know, violets and cowslips and tussocks of grass, and it really is incredible the good work that they do. So yeah, it's fantastic to see. So that's Moat Point. Now, one of the other places we do a lot of work is Woolacombe Warren. So the sand dunes down in Woolacombe. Now, the dunes here, they have similar issues, I guess, to Moat Point in that it's quite scrubby. And as you find with a lot of dune systems, they're too stable, basically. All of that scrub, it stops the dunes the sand moving around. You have the added problem with that. You know, dune systems, they want to be mobile. They want to be moving around a valley. And unfortunately, we've kind of restricted them all. We do love to build around things like this. So on one side of our dunes, you've got Woolacombe. On the other side, you've got Putsborough. Behind it, you've got Marine Drive. So they're very restricted in where they can go, which isn't great for them as a habitat. So some of the things we're doing here, it's similar in terms of removing scrub. So we do this manually. So sometimes we'll go out with slashers, which are basically a big blade on a very long stick. They are excellent fun. And we have had groups from Petrock come out with us and do this. So you're handing gigantic blades on sticks to teenagers and just sort of sending them off you go and hack down some brambles. And part of that is to create routes for livestock so they can go through them, and then they'll spread out from them, they'll make them wider. But we also do it mechanically sometimes when we have to. We prefer not to do this, but we've got a couple of really useful tools for it. So one thing we've got is an AB, which is basically 2 powered wheels with a power takeoff. So it's like a tiny tractor effectively, and you can put a reciprocating cutter on the front of that, which is basically like a gigantic hedge trimmer, and just make your way along. And yeah, that cuts the grass very effectively. And we've also got, you can just see in the picture there, beautifully superimposed, you'd never know it wasn't the same picture. That is the flail bot, which is a remote controlled flail machine, which is superb. And that's very, very good at clearing more dense vegetation. So you can send that through bramble, you can send it through elder, you can send it through gorse, anything you want really, it will drive through and smash. It's very, very effective. Now those things are quite extreme, so we try and avoid using them wherever possible, but sometimes it's necessary. And then after that, you can send in the cattle. So you can see in the picture there, those are the Devon Ruby Reds, which we try and have on the dunes as much as possible. Although obviously, when it comes to livestock, we don't have our own at North Devon, at Woolacombe anyway. So we have to work with tenant farmers, tenant graziers, So we have to work around their schedules as well, which can be a bit trickier. So we haven't had the cows there for a little while now for a couple of complicated reasons. Hopefully we're very close to getting them back out there. Yeah, fingers crossed we'll have 5 or 6, maybe more Devon Ruby Reds back on the dunes again soon, which would be very, very nice. Now, another couple of things we've done on the dunes recently, we got permission from Natural England and Plant Life to go and gather some seed using our brush harvester from Braunton Burrows. So we drove that around for a couple of days, filled up huge dumpy bags filled with seed. And we've cleared a couple of areas in our dunes and raked it all up, and we've been spreading the seed on there. So with any luck, the wet slack towards the end of the dunes might become quite exciting. There's also a few areas we've cut towards the start of the dunes, which might be, yeah, we're hoping to make a little bit more interesting floristically. That being said, you do get quite a few orchids on Woolacombe dunes anyway. We had a really good year for pyramidal orchids this year, and there were a reasonable number of bee orchids too. So we've got a few things there anyway. Hopefully we'll encourage some marsh orchids in the future as well. Yeah, we'll see how we get on. Now, we also do quite a lot of monitoring here through citizen science. So we do butterfly surveys, but the big ones, we work a lot with bumblebee conservation, and we do bumblebee surveys. Now, I think these are always really good fun. We're hoping to sort of expand the number of volunteers who come along with us and work on these. Yeah, they're always great, and we do find some interesting things. Yeah. Now, this is another thing that's very, very cool. I can't talk about it in too much detail because I'm not brilliant with things like GIS and LiDAR, but my partner's been doing a lot of work in terms of mapping on our dunes. So she's done scrub mapping, which shows the effects of our management on the scrub and what's happened to it. But this one I've got is the erosion on the dunes, just because it's slightly easier to spot what's going on it if you don't sort of know GIS all that well. So the blue areas are areas where sand has been building up, and the red areas are where sand is eroding. Now, this is the north end of the dunes, so you can see the main trend here is they've been building up at this end. And then at the south end, you can see the erosion, particularly along the front edge. So that was mostly caused by storms in the last couple of years. But you can see this shows kind of the trend for the dunes at the moment is that they want to be moving to the north currently. So finding out things like this, it can help with how we're managing them and what we're doing to them. Yeah. Now, another thing we do quite a lot of is we are trying as much as possible to have our grazing done by native species. So these boys are some of our ponies that we have on, not our ponies, but some of the ponies we have up on Woolacombe Down. I think that's Harry and Mac, but yeah, I think that's definitely Harry at the front, but I'm not great at telling them apart yet. So we go and check up on them fairly frequently. We've actually had some aerial drone footage taken of Woolacombe Down, and it showed the paths they're creating through the bracken and the scrub, and they really are doing a fantastic job. They're also, yeah, they're good boys. Over on Baggy itself, so this is the north side of Baggy. Yeah, these are our Hebridean sheep. I'm very fond of the Hebs. They are, I don't know, I find there's something very goat-like and almost a little bit weirdly satanic about them. They've got all their four horns going in strange directions. They're incredibly spindly. They're really puffy woolen beasts. They are lovely. Yeah, if you're walking around Baggy and you're on the north side, have a little potter down the slope, see if you can spot them, because they are, yeah, they're really interesting beasts. Again, they're sort of creating paths through, so they're doing an all right job. So our belted galloways again, so on Mort, and the Devon Ruby Reds that we have on the dunes in Woolacombe. Now, you can make out there, they also have collars on. And those ones, so there were two systems of invisible fencing collars that were used at the beginning. So these ones are using the other. This one is far more labor intensive, and as the two have been developed, this is the one that they've worked out is nowhere near as good and is not going to work in the long run. So this one involved wires being buried around the dunes, and then you have to plug in an electrolyzer box and a battery, and then when they go near the wire, it works in the same way as the GPS one in terms of you get a beep and then you get a shock. So the collars themselves are nowhere near as good because they leak and they're, yeah, you have to, they're a real faff. And also because they're on sand dunes, well, they move. That means the wire gets exposed very, very regularly, which is something of a nightmare. It was a brilliant idea, but it doesn't work. So eventually we'll probably move to the GPS collars on these as well. But since we've put all the money into this system, we're going to use it until it's completely gone, I think. So that's some of our conservation stuff that we're doing. But another big thing we do is in the summers is public engagement. Now that's kind of my bag, because my background has been in engagement and education. It's a bit that I have quite a lot of focus on. So you can see there the tractor and the trailer. We do our tractor trailer rides. They go every Wednesday out onto Mort Point. So there's a little talk that goes on while they go about the history of the area, about the management that we're doing on Mort, about some of the species you can see there. And because it's for everyone, you also have to have a little bit of the exciting history of smugglers and wreckers in the area as well. Some of which is, yeah, really, really interesting stuff. We do work with school groups a bit as well. So I've done a little bit in Saunton, working with the Wave Rangers, with school groups, doing things like talking about food chains and plastic pollution. We also take them around the River Lynn as well, which is always really good fun. And of course, we work with dynamic dunescapes as well. So some of you will have met Bev, who was our dynamic dunescapes officer. So they do lots of work in terms of World Sand Dunes Day, and they have pop-up events, lots of art stuff. So some of you may have seen the trail with the cows that was on the dunes, the art trail. So lots of community art groups painted various cows for us, which became a trail around the dunes. That was really good, really quite successful. And then the big bit, as far as I'm concerned, is the rock pool rambles that we do. So I'm very much of the opinion that sort of engaging people with natural environment is, yeah, massively important in terms of a conservation tool. If you want to get people thinking about conservation for the first time, potentially, you have to get them to actually care about what is around them. So I couldn't resist putting these pictures in. So we've got on the left someone holding a reasonably sized spiny spider crab. And I was very fond of the other one as well, if you'll excuse the horrible lockdown moustache. So we do get lots and lots of people come along on our rock pool rambles. We had ballpark 800 people attended our rock pool ramble events last summer. They were really, really popular. So we do those on Coombsgate Beach, which is, yeah, just around the corner from Woolacombe. You can see Mort Point in the background there. And we do it on the rocks on the right-hand side of the beach, so sort of on the top, I suppose, of the picture you're looking at now. Now we come to the point where I feel largely pointless, because I'm about to tell a lot of experts in marine things some of my favourite facts about creatures. So I'm about to tell people who know far more than I ever will about marine creatures, some interesting things about marine creatures. But here we go. I just wanted to say about some of the things we found over the last couple of years, because some of them are superb. Yeah, just really, really interesting beasts. So this summer, we found a large number of dragonets. This is a male in his breeding finery. Dragonets, I think, are lovely little fish. Sort of little bent thick fish. They sit on the bottom and shoot along. But in the breeding season, they take on these delightful electric blue colours. And one thing they also do is they have this excellent little mating ritual, whereby they sort of swim belly to belly, put their pectoral fins together and sort of spiral up towards the surface, which is, well, fantastically elaborate display. Yeah, fish have some very odd little rituals, and that is one of my favourites, definitely. Now, this is one we found in the summer of 2019. This is a crystal sea slug. So we were just down doing a rockpool ramble, looking on some of the rocks, and there was a little stream running down alongside some of them. And I just saw sort of a blob of sand shooting along this stream. Thought, hello, what is that? Shot my hand down and scooped it up, washed it off in a rock pool, and yeah, what we found was this stunning little creature. So this is a crystal sea slug, and I'm not sure any picture can ever quite do these justice, because, well, the ends of those little palps, I guess you would call them, they are truly iridescent. So if you catch them in the right light, what you're looking at is completely electric blue, and yeah, sort of moving across to silver, and yeah, absolutely stunning little thing. I'm always amazed at how you can find something which, well, as it was, it looked literally like a blob of sand shooting along a stream. Give it a little clean off and it's something amazing, which is just the one thing that fascinates me the most about rock pools. So the next one, I'm sure you're familiar with these. These are sea hares. Again, it was the summer of 2019. These were really common. We had a few in the summer of 2020, and we only had one in this past year, unfortunately. But a couple of years ago, these were all over the place. They actually had two sort of breeding seasons that year. It was a really good year for them, which was very cool. Yeah, another, I'm a sucker for a sea slug. I think a couple of things that fascinate me the most about these. So one of them is the fact that you get them in such varying colours, and they think it's probably to do with what they're eating. So if one of them's been eating a lot of red seaweed, you'll have a very reddy brown one. If one of them's been on the ulvers, it's been eating lots of the green seaweed, you'll have a sort of greeny brown one. I just find it so cool that you can get something that can change so massively in colour based on what it was eating. But also, so I did a little bit of work for a BBC documentary years ago called Seasons, and there was supposed to be a big section on breeding sea slugs in there, and they cut it. I was devastated. But they form these wonderful breeding chains. So they just sort of sit on top of each other, all breeding with each other, and it's really, really cool to see. You may find sometimes they're little rosettes of eggs stuck on things. So we did find a couple of rosettes of eggs this year actually as well, which was nice to see. But yeah, sea hares. Oh, actually, before I move on, I'm also very fond of one of their little defences. So if you get one and you irritate it somewhat, they'll sort of leak out this noxious purple goo, like immensely concentrated ribena. It's rare they do it, but when they do, it's a sight to behold. So yeah, I'm not saying to go out and irritate sea hares, but yeah, if you're lucky, you might see it. I should talk about some fish, other fish as well. This is probably my favourite fish. You may know it as a lasher or a bull rout, or I've always known it as a sea scorpion. I'm very, very fond of them. Something to do with that rather moody face he's got going on there. They just look quite grumpy and miserable the whole time. yeah, so I used to, I spent a little bit of time running an incredibly small aquarium up in Scotland, and I had lots of different tanks, and I had 5 of these guys in different tanks. Now, all of those tanks had slightly different substrates. So some of them were very green, some very brown. One of them had lots of white stone in, one of them had house bricks in the bottom as well. And they replicated all of the colors superbly. They are absolute masters of camouflage. It was the one that had patches of brick red on him that I liked the most. Fantastic at doing that. But these are also fish after my own heart. They are immensely greedy. They are roughly 3/4 mouth and stomach. So they can swallow things that are almost as big as they are, and then just sit there for about a week digesting, which to me seems like a pretty good life. And you kind of, when you're around here, you do have to mention these weaver fish. Again, I love a weaver fish. This is a lesser weaver. You can just about make out on the dorsal fin there, the first dorsal, the venomous spines that you really don't want to step on. They bury themselves in the sand, making them a devil to find. But when you get one on a ramble, it's the excitement that comes with it is so cool. I guess I've always been a fan of fish that bury themselves and have those upturned mouths as they ambush stuff. I just, yeah, something about it really appeals. It's like I just think they're delightfully ugly. But yeah. And again, sea slugs. This is one we found last year. This is a Celtic sea slug, which are a bit unusual in that they have lungs rather than gills, so they're sort of more terrestrial. Yeah, they're very, very small, somewhat unobtrusive looking, I guess. But one of the really cool things they found about these, they tend to hibernate in the winter. Well, hibernate in inverted commas. You relatively often find them in an empty barnacle shell, sort of curled up inside, if you will. So if you ever sort of look inside a dead barnacle, an open barnacle shell, you might see this sort of lumpy blackish grey thing inside, which will be one of these Celtic sea slugs, just chilling out over the winter. But yeah, excellently interesting little beasts. And that is, that is everything I had for you. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.